Can you imagine a child being forgotten by their own family in their own home? In the quiet suburbs of Idaho, Daisy grew up in a house draped with hydrangeas, pristine white fences, and cozy dinners under golden light. But behind the perfect facade, her parents, Robert, an engineer obsessed with physics, and Jade, a child psychologist, turned her into a failed project. At 3 years old, Daisy couldn't read, prompting Jade to sigh, "She has no potential." Those words, overheard by Daisy, carved her first deep wound. When her brother Marcus was born, everything shifted: smart toys, elite tutors, all for him. Daisy, with her old workbooks and constant scolding, quietly became a shadow, her young heart slowly breaking in the home that was once her sanctuary. The injustice in Daisy's family wasn't fleeting moments but a series of sharp, relentless cuts, day after day, slicing into her fragile confidence. From the moment Marcus was born, Robert and Jade's eyes turned solely to him, as if Daisy were a flawed draft needing correction. Marcus, with his radiant smile and early curiosity, was cradled by Jade, taught flashcards before he could walk. Meanwhile, Daisy was relegated to a corner of the living room with a tattered, ink-stained workbook. "You need to try harder, Daisy," Jade would say, her voice cold as winter wind, whenever Daisy struggled with addition or the alphabet. Robert, who eagerly explained physics laws to Marcus, gave Daisy only indifferent glances, as if she were a problem not worth solving. In those moments, Daisy quietly clutched her worn teddy bear, sitting by the window overlooking golden wheat fields, wondering if she truly belonged. At 5, with her big, round eyes, she began to feel like an uninvited guest in her own home. At 7, Daisy tried desperately to make her parents see her, even just once. She spent weeks meticulously crafting a suspension bridge model from popsicle sticks and string for a school science fair. The night before, she stayed up late, carefully gluing each detail, imagining Jade's smile, Robert's pat on the shoulder. On the school stage, hands trembling as she held her model, Daisy's heart pounded with pride as she won first place. She ran home, cheeks flushed, clutching the model like a dream. But when she placed it on the dining table, Jade barely glanced at it, saying, "Marcus just built a circuit in his enrichment class. You should learn from him." Robert, busy designing a new bookshelf for Marcus, didn't even look up. Daisy stood there, her smile fading, feeling her heart constrict. She quietly took the model to her room, hiding it under the bed, where her hopes began piling up in the dark. That night, curled up on her bed, tears streaming, she whispered to herself, "Maybe I'll never be good enough." That pain, like a toxic seed, took root in her soul, making her doubt her own worth. By 12, an event made Daisy feel erased from her family. Her room, where she hung her hand-drawn pictures, where the window opened to wheat fields like an escape for her soul, was her only safe haven. But one afternoon, Jade walked in, voice firm, "Marcus needs this room for his lab table and study equipment." Daisy protested, voice shaking, "But this is my room." Jade frowned, "You're old enough to share." Within 2 days, Daisy's belongings, her bed, bookshelf, glow-in-the-dark stars on the ceiling, were moved to a tiny room by the laundry, where the washer's hum each night reminded her she had no place. What broke her most was finding her memory box, filled with drawings, medals, and a letter to herself saying, "I can do it," tossed in the trash by Jade to make space for Marcus's things. Daisy stood by the bin, hands trembling as she salvaged crumpled papers, tears falling like rain. She didn't scream or argue, but inside, a small flame sparked, not anger, but resolve that one day, she'd prove her worth. The injustice peaked as Daisy entered her final year of high school, facing a choice that would shape her future. Through relentless effort, she earned admission to the University of Idaho with a partial scholarship for environmental engineering, a feat any family would celebrate. Daisy prepared carefully to share the news at dinner, hoping this time her parents would see her differently. She took a deep breath, starting, "I got into the University of Idaho, with a scholarship," but Jade cut her off, voice sharp, "Marcus was just selected for an international STEM program. We need to focus on him." Robert added, as if rehearsed, "The savings are for Marcus. You can go to community college or get a job." Those words hit like a sledgehammer, shattering Daisy's illusions of fairness. She sat silent, hands clenched under the table, feeling her world collapse. She glanced at Marcus, who looked down, saying nothing, offering no defense. That night, Daisy stood before the mirror in her tiny room, staring into her red-rimmed eyes. She whispered, "I don't need them. I'll do it myself." The pain of being fully cast aside made her feel erased from the family story, but it also awakened a new strength within her. One evening, passing her old room, now Marcus's, Daisy overheard him say to Jade, "Mom, Daisy works harder than me. Why don't you give her a chance?" Jade snapped, "Marcus, you're the family's future. Daisy will manage." Daisy froze outside the door, heart pounding. She hadn't expected Marcus, the pampered brother, to notice the unfairness. But his failure to challenge Jade showed her she couldn't rely on anyone in the family to change her fate. She walked to her small room, closed the door, and wrote in her journal, "From today, I live for myself." The flame of resolve in her burned brighter, ready to guide her through the darkness of the neglect her family imposed. In the dimness of the tiny room by the laundry, Daisy vowed to rise. But she never imagined the light guiding her would come from two people she always saw as her safe harbor, her grandparents, Vincent and Nyla. With their unconditional love and unwavering faith, they became the flame warming Daisy's chilled heart, opening a new path for her to rediscover herself. Vincent and Nyla were the light piercing the fog of Daisy's years of being overlooked by her family. Unlike Robert and Jade, who measured her worth by tests or comparisons to Marcus, her grandparents saw Daisy as a hydrangea, beautiful without needing to be a rare orchid. Vincent, with his silver hair and warm storytelling voice, was a retired railroad engineer who built steel bridges over rivers. He'd sit with Daisy on the wooden bench behind their house, pointing to the golden wheat fields, saying, "Life's like a bridge, Daisy. You don't need to be perfect, just strong enough to cross." Nyla, a retired teacher, brought adventure books, not to teach her, but to spark her imagination. She'd smile, resting a hand on Daisy's shoulder, "You're a wonderful story, Daisy, if you dare to keep writing it." Those words, like precious gems, sparkled in Daisy's mind, anchoring her through days she felt invisible. As Daisy entered her senior year of high school, her college dreams were threatened by Robert and Jade's decision to pour all their savings into Marcus's STEM program. The thought of abandoning the University of Idaho felt like being trapped in a maze with no exit. But one autumn afternoon, as golden leaves carpeted the path to her grandparents' house, Vincent and Nyla invited her over. By the crackling fireplace, with the scent of fresh apple pie in the air, Vincent looked at her, eyes resolute. "Daisy, we'll cover your tuition. No loans, no conditions. You deserve every opportunity." Nyla took her hand, voice gentle, "We see you, Daisy, and we believe you'll do great things." Daisy froze, tears streaming like a spring. She hugged Nyla tightly, sobbing, feeling a weight lift from her chest after years of pressure. In her grandmother's warm embrace, Daisy felt love without expectations for the first time, like sunlight chasing away the darkness of her parents' dismissal. One quiet evening, as moonlight spilled through her grandparents' window, Nyla sat with Daisy, holding a steaming mug of tea. She looked at her, eyes tinged with sadness but firm, and shared a story Daisy had never heard. "You know, I was once the extra child in my family," she said, voice low. "They said I wasn't smart or special enough. But I became a teacher, helping hundreds of kids find their light. I don't want you to go through what I did." Daisy sat still, her heart seeming to pause. She'd never imagined Nyla, so strong and warm, had carried wounds like her own. That story didn't just ignite a fire of resolve in Daisy, not just for herself, but to honor Nyla's faith. It forged a deep bond between them. She squeezed Nyla's hand, whispering, "I won't let you down." Nyla smiled, eyes glistening, "You've never let me down, Daisy." Vincent and Nyla's support wasn't just tuition, it was a foundation rebuilding the self-worth Daisy's family had crushed. They never demanded high grades or outshining Marcus, but encouraged her passions. When Daisy shyly shared her dream of studying environmental engineering to protect the planet, Vincent nodded, eyes bright, "You'll build bridges not just for people, but for the world." Those words etched into her mind, becoming her compass. Whenever Daisy doubted herself, images of Vincent talking about unyielding bridges or Nyla handing her a book became her strength, like a breeze lifting her through stormy days. The day Daisy received her University of Idaho acceptance letter, Vincent led her to the old shed behind their house, where the scent of wood and machine oil lingered. He pulled back a dusty tarp, revealing a finely carved wooden box. Inside was a small engineering toolkit, ruler, pencils, and his old notebook from his days as an engineer. "These got me through tough times," Vincent said, voice thick. "Now they're yours." Daisy touched the notebook, feeling the weight of his trust. She hugged him tightly, tears falling, not from sorrow, but from knowing she'd found a true family, not in Robert and Jade's house, but in her grandparents' hearts. In that moment, Daisy felt the world opening up, and she was ready to step forward with newfound resilience. Vincent and Nyla's presence wasn't just in grand gestures but in small, meaningful acts. Nyla sent handwritten letters, her elegant script reading, "Every step you take is a victory. Don't look back at what others think." Vincent called to check in, pretending to be curious about her classes, but really reminding her he was watching over her. Those gestures, like stepping stones, guided Daisy through days she feared she wasn't enough. Once, when Daisy sent them a photo of her standing by a technical drawing at school, Vincent called back, laughing heartily, "You remind me of my younger self, but you're way better." Daisy laughed, her heart soaring. The morning before leaving for Idaho to start college, Nyla handed Daisy a small envelope. Inside was a photo of 5-year-old Daisy, beaming by the wheat fields, with words on the back, "Daisy, our light, always." Daisy was stunned to learn her grandparents had quietly kept her moments, photos, poems, even a note from her popsicle stick bridge at 7. They were proof she was always loved, even when she felt invisible. Daisy hugged Nyla, crying as if shedding all her pain, feeling the scars of her parents' neglect healed by her grandparents' love. In that moment, she knew she didn't just have a shot at college, but a true family where she was valued for who she was. Vincent and Nyla didn't just give Daisy a chance, they planted in her the belief that she deserved to dream big. They were the torch lighting her path, from a self-doubting girl to a woman ready to conquer the world. Thanks to them, Daisy entered the University of Idaho not just with a scholarship, but with a heart full of hope and an unyielding spirit, ready to write the next chapter of her life. Vincent and Nyla became the wind beneath Daisy's wings, giving her not only the chance to attend college, but also the belief that she was worthy of love and success. In their warm home, by the fireplace and among old books, Daisy found a safe harbor amid the storm of injustice from her parents, Robert and Jade. As she stepped into the University of Idaho, Daisy carried not just dreams of a brighter future but the responsibility to make her grandparents proud. No longer the girl curled up in the tiny room by the laundry, she was a young woman ready to write her own story, each stroke bold and proud. The University of Idaho was where Daisy first felt the world wasn't just cold stares and criticism. Environmental engineering, with lectures on healing the planet, ignited a passionate fire in her, creating solutions that were sustainable and brought hope to forgotten communities. In bright lecture halls, Daisy bloomed like a hydrangea in morning sun. Gone was her timidity, she confidently raised her hand to answer complex questions, her eyes sparkling as she explained ways to optimize wastewater systems. Professor Clara Bennett, a renowned environmental scientist, called her a breath of innovation. After Daisy presented a rainwater recycling project for rural areas, classmates, initially seeing her as quiet, soon sought her advice, drawn not just to her knowledge but to her warmth and relentless spirit. Each night in the library, under the glow of a desk lamp, Daisy wrote in her journal beside Vincent's old engineering notebook, "I'm building a bridge, not from popsicle sticks like at 7, but from intellect and resolve." Those words were a promise to herself that her past would never define her future. One winter morning in her sophomore year, as snow blanketed the campus, Daisy spotted a flyer on a bulletin board. An international environmental solutions competition, with the top prize being an internship at Greenwave Technologies, a renewable energy startup. Though nervous about her lack of experience, she decided to try, fueled by the faith Vincent and Nyla had instilled. In the lab, under fluorescent lights, Daisy spent weeks developing a water filtration system using recycled materials, both effective and cost-efficient. She submitted her project without high hopes, but 2 months later, an email announcing she'd made the top 3 sent her heart racing. At the finals in Seattle, facing a panel of top experts, Daisy presented with a confidence she didn't know she had. She spoke of water-scarce communities, her dream to bring hope through engineering, and how her system could transform thousands of lives. When her name was called as the winner, Daisy stood frozen on stage, tears blurring her vision. She rushed outside, calling Nyla, voice choked, "Grandma, I did it." On the other end, Nyla sobbed, "You always could, Daisy. From day one." In that moment, under Seattle's gray sky, Daisy felt the world embrace her, erasing every doubt that had once caged her heart. Her internship at Greenwave Technologies opened a new world where Daisy's talents were recognized and nurtured. Greenwave's office, with green-covered walls and natural light, felt like where she truly belonged. Starting with a small project to improve a water filtration system for arid regions, she quickly impressed the leadership. After graduating with honors, Daisy was offered a full-time role, which she seized with burning determination. At 26, she led a team to develop Nyla Flow, an advanced water filtration system named after her grandmother. Using nanotechnology to remove 99% of impurities at 30% lower cost than existing solutions. Presenting to Boise City Council, Daisy stood tall, her voice resonant, explaining how Nyla Flow could bring clean water to thousands of homes. A $12 million contract was signed soon after, putting Greenwave on the global map. That night, alone on the office balcony, watching the city lights flicker, Daisy's tears fell. She recalled Jade's words, "She has no potential." A faint smile curved her lips, a silent declaration, "You were wrong, Mom. Completely wrong." A major challenge arose when Daisy noticed irregularities in the industry. EcoPure, a competitor, unveiled a water filtration system strikingly similar to Nyla Flow. At first, she thought it was coincidence, but her instincts screamed otherwise. She spent 2 weeks tirelessly analyzing hundreds of emails and technical documents. Late one night, in the quiet office, she uncovered proof: a former Greenwave employee had sold her design to EcoPure. Daisy didn't hesitate. She compiled a detailed report with evidence of the fraud and presented it to the leadership. Her voice was calm but sharp as she demanded immediate action to protect their patent. The result was a resounding victory. EcoPure withdrew the product, issued a public apology, and Greenwave avoided millions in losses. Elena Torres, Greenwave's CEO, called Daisy into her office, eyes full of admiration. "You didn't just save the project. You saved our reputation." A month later, at 28, Daisy was named head of research development, one of the youngest in the industry. Holding the appointment letter, she felt she was grasping her dream, once crushed by her parents, now a reality. Daisy's career was a symphony of perseverance and creativity. She learned to turn failures into lessons, like when a pilot project collapsed after 3 months. Instead of faltering, she rallied her team, held brainstorming sessions, and found a new solution, turning disaster into a stepping stone. She also mentored interns, especially young women, sharing her story to inspire them. Each time she spoke, she saw her younger self, the girl who thought she was nothing, and smiled, knowing she was changing lives. Every weekend, Daisy called Vincent and Nyla, sharing her progress. Vincent's laughter and Nyla's tearful "You're our pride" were her greatest fuel, like a breeze pushing her further. One day, Daisy was invited to speak at an international environmental conference in New York. Before hundreds of experts, she shared Nyla Flow and her journey, from a girl dismissed by her family to a leader in engineering. When she mentioned Vincent and Nyla, her voice trembled, tears falling. "They saw me when no one else did." Her speech touched the audience's hearts, and the video went viral, making Daisy a symbol of resilience. After the conference, a publisher approached, asking her to write a book about her story. Looking out her hotel window toward the horizon, Daisy smiled. "Maybe it's time I told my story." In that moment, she knew the bridge she'd built not only crossed her dark past but led her to the stars. Daisy had built a bridge over the darkness of her past, from the days when her parents, Robert and Jade, dismissed her, to becoming head of research development at Greenwave Technologies at 28. At the University of Idaho, she blossomed like a hydrangea, earning recognition from professors and peers. Her Nyla Flow project brought clean water to thousands of homes, saved her company from a patent theft scheme, and her speech at the New York conference made her a symbol of resilience. With every step, Daisy carried the faith of her grandparents, Vincent and Nyla, who saw her light when the world seemed fixated on Marcus. But just when she thought she'd escaped her family's shadow, an invitation to return to the old Idaho home pulled her into one final storm, a chance for reconciliation or a final cut from those who'd pushed her to the margins. Daisy never imagined returning to the house where her childhood scars still simmered. But after her appointment as head of R&D, a milestone she'd dreamed of during long study nights, Jade called, her voice uncharacteristically warm, "Daisy, let me throw a party at home to celebrate. Just family and a few relatives, very cozy. We should reunite." Though a warning bell rang in her heart, Daisy agreed, hoping for a chance to heal or, at least, to prove she'd risen above their past denials. She sent Jade $4,500 for the party and a short guest list, including Vincent and Nyla. As her car rolled down the familiar road to the house with its white fence and hydrangea garden, Daisy took a deep breath, telling herself, "I'm not that little girl anymore. I've built my own life." But the moment she stepped through the door, the air felt stifling, as if time had frozen since she'd left. The house was decorated more lavishly than she'd expected, the dining table draped in white silk, purple orchids arranged in a heart, and candlelight flickering on the staircase. Yet there was no sign of a party for her. Instead, she saw Marcus, now 24, standing in the living room, dressed in a sharp navy suit, beaming beside a large sign, "Congratulations, Marcus, Ivy League scholarship." Guests, from relatives to Robert and Jade's friends, clapped enthusiastically as Jade stepped forward, voice brimming with pride. "Today we celebrate Marcus, our family's hope, accepted into Yale's STEM program." Daisy froze, her hand tightening around her wine glass, feeling the floor collapse beneath her. The party she'd funded, meant to honor her, had been hijacked for Marcus. Once again, she was pushed to the sidelines of her own story. Daisy quietly sought out Vincent and Nyla in the crowd. They stood in a corner, eyes filled with concern. Nyla took her hand, whispering, "You don't have to stay." But a fire ignited in Daisy, not anger, but a resolve not to let this injustice pass in silence. She walked to the main dining table, where Jade was toasting Marcus. The guests fell quiet, sensing a shift in the air. Daisy raised her glass, her voice trembling but clear. "I'd like to say a few words." She scanned the room, her gaze lingering on Jade's surprised face, Robert's irritation, and Marcus's averted eyes. "This party, which I paid $4,500 for, was to celebrate my becoming head of R&D at Greenwave Technologies, a milestone I achieved without this family's support." Murmurs rippled through the crowd, some guests exchanged uneasy glances. Daisy continued, her voice growing steadier, "But today, like so many times before, I've been sidelined for Marcus. Since I was a child, my parents chose my brother, dismissing my every effort. I'm not here to ruin his moment, but to say I won't stay silent anymore." The room felt frozen, broken only by Jade's sharp intake of breath and the faint clink of a glass on the table. Robert shot to his feet, face flushed, voice icy. "Daisy, that's enough. If you dare embarrass this family, don't expect to be our daughter. No inheritance, no contact, nothing." Jade cut in, voice shaking with anger. "You've always been jealous of Marcus. You don't deserve our love." But Daisy didn't back down. She met their eyes, heart pounding but fearless. "I don't need love I have to beg for," she said, her voice calm but sharp as a blade. "I've built my life, and I don't need validation from people who never truly saw me." She turned to Marcus, who stared at the floor, gripping his glass. "Marcus, you're not at fault for being loved. But you're at fault for letting me be erased from this family." Marcus looked up, eyes wavering, but said nothing. Daisy set her glass down, feeling as if she'd shed a burden carried for 20 years. Vincent and Nyla, who'd been watching silently, stepped to Daisy's side. Nyla, her silver hair glinting under the candlelight, spoke, her voice trembling but resolute. "We've seen enough. Robert, Jade, you chose to favor Marcus, but you overlooked a rare gem." Vincent added, his voice deep like a tolling bell, 3 months ago, we revised our will. Everything, house, savings, stocks, goes to Daisy, not because she asked, but because she's the only one who lived with integrity and resilience. Jade let out a gasp, as if struck. Mom, how could you? Marcus is your grandson. Nyla met her daughter's eyes, voice thick, because Daisy is the only one who never stepped on others to rise. She deserves it all. Marcus, unexpectedly, stood, his voice shaking. Daisy, I'm sorry. He turned to Jade, eyes pained. Mom, she's right. We were wrong to her. Jade, stunned, tried to grab his arm, but he shook his head and left the room, leaving a heavy silence. Daisy watched him go, her heart no longer angry, only heavy with a deep sadness. She took Nyla's hand, feeling the warmth of her trembling fingers. Vincent rested a hand on her shoulder, saying, You did the right thing, Daisy. You don't need them to shine. Daisy nodded, tears streaming, but this time, she cried from liberation. She walked out of the house, under Idaho's starlit night sky, feeling as if she'd closed a painful chapter and opened a new one, where she was the author of her own story. That confrontation wasn't just an explosion of truth but the end of the years Daisy lived in the shadow of favoritism. She didn't seek revenge, but recognition of herself, not from Robert, Jade, or Marcus, but from her own resilient heart. With Vincent and Nyla's support, Daisy left the old house without looking back, carrying a profound lesson. A person's worth lies not in others' validation, but in the strength to stand up, speak the truth, and live authentically. 3 years have passed since that fateful night, and Daisy never once looked back at the house where she was an invisible shadow. She poured her heart into her career at Greenwave Technologies, where she was not only head of research development but a beacon of inspiration for her team. At 31, Daisy was named CEO, the youngest female CEO in the company's history. Under her leadership, Greenwave expanded globally, deploying the Nyla Flow system to dozens of countries, bringing clean water to the driest corners of the world. Each signed contract, each smile from a villager who benefited, proved that Daisy had soared far beyond Jade's words. She has no potential. She didn't work to prove them wrong but to live her dream, a dream of a better world built on intellect and compassion. In her top-floor office at Greenwave, Daisy hung a small photo, 5-year-old her, beaming by the wheat fields, preserved by Vincent and Nyla through the years. It reminded her that her light never dimmed, no matter how her family tried to extinguish it. One spring afternoon, as golden sunlight streamed through her office window, Daisy received a handwritten letter, its shaky but familiar script from Marcus, now 27, writing from a small town in Oregon. Daisy, it took me years to understand what you said that night. I'm sorry, not just for what happened, but for not having the courage to change things. I'm trying to find my own path, no longer living in our parents' shadow. Daisy read the letter, her heart stirring with an unfamiliar pang. She didn't respond immediately, but for the first time, she felt a quiet peace. Marcus, once the center of their family's favoritism, was trying to stand on his own, however late. She folded the letter, tucked it into a drawer, and smiled. She didn't need his apology to heal, she'd done that long ago, thanks to Vincent, Nyla, and her own inner strength. Robert and Jade's lives, in contrast, lost their former sheen. After Daisy's public revelation that night, many relatives distanced themselves, unable to stomach their blatant favoritism. Marcus, after dropping out of Yale's program under overwhelming pressure, attempted a startup that failed, eventually returning to live with his parents in the old house. Jade, who once boasted about the family's hope, now lived in strained silence, occasionally glancing at the tiny room by the laundry, Daisy's old space, with a flicker of regret, but lacked the courage to make amends. Robert, with his rigid pride, refused to admit fault, but his eyes no longer held their old confidence. The house with its hydrangea garden still stood, but it was no longer a home, only a museum of irreparable mistakes. Daisy's bond with Vincent and Nyla, however, grew ever deeper. Every Sunday, she drove to their red brick house, where the scent of freshly baked cookies and Vincent's laughter filled the air. They sat around the dining table, flipping through old photo albums where a young Daisy grinned beside her grandparents. Nyla recounted stories of Daisy's childhood, like the time she tried climbing an oak tree to touch the clouds, and Vincent pretended to forget details, coaxing Daisy to retell them, his eyes twinkling with joy. Once, when Daisy asked if they ever regretted leaving everything to her, Nyla took her hand, voice soft but firm. "We didn't give it for the value of the assets, but for your value, the one who always chose kindness and resilience, even when the world turned its back." Vincent nodded, adding, "You're the strongest bridge we've ever seen." Daisy smiled, her heart warm, knowing their love was her greatest inheritance, not measured in money but in unconditional faith. One evening, after a long day of global strategy meetings, Daisy stood by her office window, watching Boise's lights glimmer under the night sky. She thought of her journey, from the girl dismissed, stripped of her room and opportunities, to the woman leading a company that changed the world. She no longer sought validation from Robert or Jade, nor needed Marcus's apology. Her worth wasn't in what her family denied her, but in what she'd built: a brilliant career, a resilient heart, and a true family with Vincent and Nyla. She opened Vincent's old notebook, flipping to the last page where, at 18, she'd written, "I will do it." Smiling, she picked up a pen and added, "And I did." The lesson from Daisy's journey is not just a story of overcoming family injustice, but a profound truth about self-worth. From a forgotten girl in a house filled with hydrangeas, Daisy rose to become a symbol of resilience, proving that your value doesn't depend on validation from those who turn their backs. Her journey reminds us, even when overlooked, you can still write your own story. Will you stay silent or stand up for yourself? Like, comment, and subscribe to share your thoughts and support inspiring stories like this. Your support is the spark that keeps me creating deeper content. Together, we can spread the message of inner strength and change the world, one story at a time.